The Fan welcomes some great shows to Grand Casino Arena this year, including Lionel Richie, Earth, Wind, and Fire, June 24th. Tickets are on sale now. Get complete details on all of our upcoming shows on the concert page, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Alec Lewis, The Athletic, theathletic.com, Alec_Lewis via X. He was chronicling the first round of the NFL draft quite adroitly last night, and he joins us now. Alec, it's Paul Allen and Nordo at Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center. Good morning. How are you?
I'm great, guys. How are you? I can't believe you're putting me in front of Kevin O'Connell. That feels like a way for him to just listen and then rip me right afterwards. But no, I'm happy to be here.
I mean, Kevin might be tired, and I don't know what kind of a mood the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings is in right now, which means all foot jokes are eliminated, and I probably won't start the conversation with Mike Vrabel. Do you think those are wise moves?
Is it a wise move for me to comment on that, or should I just, proceed without saying anything and talk about the number 18 pick? What do you think, Paul?
As you like to say, discretion is the better part of valor. And I think the discretion is going to be the better part of valor there. So, Caleb Banks.
And we'll land the plane here.
You don't miss a trick. Wow, the best. Caleb Banks, your thoughts?
I would say 30 minutes ago, I talked to Billy Napier, who was the Florida head coach and recruited Caleb Banks to the University of Florida from Louisville, and he said, I'm paraphrasing, but he's like, in the last 20 to 30 years, there are very few guys who have ever entered that league who have this degree of height, weight, arm length, and athleticism. I think the word he used was could be a generational talent. So that upside, you don't find that upside all the time. That's what was the allure for Minnesota to do this at 18. And obviously, I think people have a lot of questions about it, a lot of commentary on it. But I mean, they took a big swing here, and the course of time will determine whether their projection is correct. And if it is correct, it will have a big impact for this team for a while. And if it's not correct, it will have a big impact for this team for a while.
Alec Lewis, The Athletic, theathletic.com.
Yeah, and in terms of just kind of this is a draft, as PA mentioned yesterday. There have been several names, whether it's Jordan Tyson, Jermod McCoy, the corner out of Tennessee, players with injury issues, and now kind of getting to see, what the viewpoints are. Not too many worries about Tyson as he goes early last night. McCoy's still on the board as we enter day 2, but specifically with Banks, just whether it's the level of surprise. None of us can truly get every piece of information that's coming from inside the building in terms of their level of confidence. I assume that it is high, given they select him at 18. But kind of just the level of surprise and really the polarizing nature of viewpoints of Caleb has led to a lot of people going, what? A lot of people going, love it. If he's healthy, he's a top 10 pick. And a lot of people scratching their heads on a Friday morning after the draft.
Yeah, I mean, there were definitely, the initial reaction before it was even on television. There were a couple of texts that was like, wow, wild. I mean, that was from people in the league. Like, that was the initial reaction. But you talk to everybody, and it's like, look, in this specific draft, there were not a ton of blue chip caliber players, meaning potential Pro Bowl, perennial Pro Bowl, all pro caliber players. There just weren't. And especially when you're picking at 18, like, it is really difficult to find a guy like that in this specific draft. And Caleb Banks obviously has the concerns exist for a reason from a health standpoint, but he is one of potentially the only guy remaining on the board who was that caliber of player. And so, you really face a fork in the road at that point if you're Rob Brzezinski and the Vikings. You're like, do we just try to play it safe, or do we try to do what teams typically try to do in the first round, which is get a potential star caliber player? And they took that path and have talked highly about their medical evaluation. And for me, the way I will frame this one is it is a bet on this organization's ability to maximize talent from a health perspective, from a coaching perspective, from an infrastructure and resources perspective. And this will be and there have been some in recent years of how much can a guy enter this building and reach his potential. And if this guy can, the comparison that people use is Chris Jones, who will be a future Hall of Famer who plays for the Kansas City Chiefs.
And with that, so let's just walk away from the foot. The foot's an A topic, and fans are all over it, and whether it's talkbacks or the text line, like that's what people are very much focused on right now. And just without all that intel, I completely understand that, totally get it. But let's just say he's on the field, he's healthy, he's active. We got the Javon Hargraves of the world talking about how this ain't the defense for a defensive tackle, et cetera. What does Caleb Banks look like in that D tackle room and on the field as somebody that Flores can feast with?
Yeah, he looks like a monster. I mean, I would ask anybody who's unfamiliar to try to go find highlights of the Florida LSU game from 2024. And I actually went back yesterday afternoon before the draft and was watching the tape from this game. I think PFF had him at like 9 pressures in this game, but he is just wrecking shop. And I mean, I'm watching the film, sitting on my computer in my apartment, shaking my head at what this guy is. I mean, he's 6'6". He's 330 pounds. He's got 35-inch arms. He's from a just optics perspective, like he looks built in the lab. And so the idea of plugging him in next to Jalen Redmond with edge rushers that this team obviously has a lot of faith in, will allow them to utilize different types of stunts. It will allow them to just rush the quarterback with 4 in a way that allows more defenders to occupy more space and coverage. I understand that in recent years, whether it's Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, Harrison Phillips, like those guys haven't really gotten after the passer a ton, and they've been really system-type players. But I think Brian Flores, who is a smart defensive coordinator, will adapt to the personnel that he has. And if that means, loading the line of scrimmage to create a one-on-one for Caleb Banks against a bigger and slower guard, like that's what I believe they will do.
Alec, the autonomy of a selection, the collaborative nature of this group, has been that they've talked about it before, but, we are in an in-between period potentially with Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah out and a general managerial search taking place, I believe, maybe in the near future. So you're in kind of an in-between situation now. So when it comes to the autonomy, I certainly don't believe that there is one person who is like, all right, yeah, I hear you, bam, bangs down their fist. That's the pick because that's what they want. But like Brian Flores is probably a stupid question, but I mean, if he loves somebody, which I would imagine he loves this guy 10 of 10, well, I mean, that carries a lot of weight in making this call, right?
Yeah, and I would say just from everything I've learned and heard about Brian Flores over the course of the last 3 years, if there is a player he loves, he will not be afraid to make that very, very, very clear and loudly. And so, yeah, I mean, there is no question that his sign-off would have been absolutely critical to this. And I wrote this, but they had a lot of touch points on this player. Like Ryan Nielsen, the new defensive line coach, flew down to Gainesville and spent the entire day with him one-on-one, was the first coach to do that of anybody in the NFL. They had him on the board. They like Ryan got lunch with him. So there was that. Pat Hill, the assistant D-line coach, spent a lot of time with them at the Senior Bowl in Mobile. Pat was coaching the Senior Bowl, so that was another touch point. And then it wasn't reported, but he did come as a group of Power 5 players for the top 30 visit that they had. And so that was another kind of element to their evaluation. So, yeah, I mean, it is an interesting, like I had some people in the league say to me, I wonder if this happens if the GM has the major voice in the room. And I think it's an interesting question. It's an interesting conversation. But, ultimately, I think it's pretty simple here there weren't many players who could become potential stars at that spot. Caleb Banks, if he stays healthy, is one of those guys. And so that's why they did this. And it comes with considerable risk, but the reward was something they cared more about in this case.
Conversation talker for us the last couple of days, 9 to noon, is the idea of if they were able to add another pick day 2. And, part of the reaction to the Caleb Banks selection is a lot of people will just flippantly throw out there, well, they should have traded back. And then they still would have had an opportunity to take Caleb Banks. You think the phone was ringing? Was the phone being dialed? Any sense or vibe in terms of how flexible or nimble they were trying to move to maybe still get Caleb Banks? Or, well, he's there and we're just going to take him?
Yeah, I mean, obviously calls happen both before the draft where teams that are seeking, just gauging the trade marketplace, like the Vikings obviously had calls before the draft to just gauge what was possible. And then in the draft, it is my understanding that, the phones were working and that there were calls. But I would say this. I've seen a lot of people say, they should have traded back. He wasn't going to go until the 40s or 50s because that's where he was on the public draft experts' big boards. What I would say is I knew going in, Kansas City, which eventually picked Peter Woods, the defensive tackle at 29, they really like this player. And Kansas City is a team that over the years has proven if they like a player, they will go up and get somebody regardless. And they had the draft ammunition to do that. I also think I've heard a couple other teams in that 20 range definitely had their eyes on Caleb Banks. And so you really, if you're Rob Brzezinski and if you're the Vikings in that position, you just weigh the risk of, if we move back and try to get creative and get another pick in day 2, which was, you could make that happen and hope and wish that he gets there. But as Kevin O'Connell, who will be on this show quite soon, I believe, has said many times, he doesn't like hope being a strategy. And so they just did it at 18 because of their conviction on the player.
Lastly, today, rounds 2 and 3, then Saturday. Got any steam, position specific, name specific? What do you think's coming up down the road?
Yeah, there's a whole story at The Athletic of names for today that I would recommend people go check that out. And that is a plug that I don't do often. But, I think, look, at 49, it's just not going to surprise me if there is a receiver in play there. The depth at the position for the team is critically important with how they structure their offense, and there are a bunch of receivers in that range who make sense. Now, guys like Jeremy Bernard from Alabama and Dejon Stribling from Ole Miss, will they get to 49? I think that's the major question that I have currently. And then after that, I think the feasible options are center. I think the feasible options are DB. Let's say some of the receivers aren't there at 49, maybe an off-ball linebacker slips in there. And then, we'll just see on Jonathan Grenard. This team has not wanted to trade him for anything less than a return that is real premium and makes them feel very okay with what it means to part with a guy who's such a core player, but that would obviously create the need for another edge rusher. So it's pretty fluid. We'll see what happens, but it should be interesting.
Enjoy the night at Alec_Lewis via X. We will be following you there. Thank you very much for the time and the multiple appearances 9 to noon this week. Thank you, Alec.
Of course. enjoy the head coach. I think he'll be in a good mood, PA.
I hope so. Thank you. That was our Steve's Appliances Marathon segment. Steve's Appliances has a customer appreciation event taking place right now. You can save a lot of money by going to stevesappliances.com or heading to the big showroom in Mounds View. Take advantage of that if you need appliances. It's stevesappliances.com. Minnesota Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell is set to join 9 to noon around the corner. But first, Double B got this.
The cash thing, the fan and bigdeck.com. I'm going to give you a shot to win bonus bucks to the National Cash Contest. Head to KFAN.com. The keyword is bills. Keyword bills, KFAN.com. Keyword bill. Bonus Bucks is back on KFAN. We have 9 chances for you to win $1,000 every weekday. It's every hour from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. To enter keywords, learn more at KFAN.com. Bonus Bucks is presented by BigDeck.com.
Hey, Double B along with Nordo for a second so I can go put out a little fire. Can you guys, is there anything with like Zuki in the morning skate or anything wild related? And I'll be right back.
So here's what I've got, Nordo. I've got a Russo tweet that Zuccarello did skate earlier today. He skated on his own before practice. Trennion did not skate with the main group, but Brink was still on the first power play unit in place of Zuccarello. So we don't know. He's skating, which is a good sign, but he didn't skate in the actual practice, which is a bad sign. Your thoughts?
That is a bad sign. And I remember when we chatted with Russo yesterday, he mentioned that both Zuccarello and Trennion, can't forget about Yakov, that both of them were on the ice kind of on their own, but weren't participating in any official team-related practice and skate festivities. So that's absolutely something to watch. Appreciate the Russo intel there. Game 4 tomorrow afternoon, 4:30 p.m. at Grand Casino Arena. I don't need to tell Wild fans here this being down 2-1 thing is bad enough after the double OT and nobody got any sleep afterwards. But to not win tomorrow would be a massive issue for our favorite hockey team. So need this one. Let's tie it up at 2. I do have this while we await the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, Kevin O'Connell. You heard him, and we initially thought we were going to talk with Rob Brzezinski today, and because not everyone listens to the NFL draft party, many people locked into the howl last night as they blew out the Nuggets. Many of you may not have heard Kevin O'Connell's conversation with PA and Pete and Bursich and Charch at U.S. Bank Stadium after they selected Caleb Banks. So with that said, Rob Brzezinski probably making some moves. Maybe he's getting tricky on day 2, and he can't join us next segment because he's so busy putting pawns on the chessboard and working his way through this weekend's draft. So Kevin O'Connell joining us momentarily. But I got this hot off the presses, and I love this because I got 3 girls. Now they're not high school age yet, but Ava and Stella are 10, turning 11 here shortly. Season 2 of the Minnesota High School Girls Flag Football League. It kicks off this weekend. And how quickly this stuff grows. You know, when the NFL gets behind something, it tends to find its way up the rungs of the ladder more quickly maybe than it would on its own. But this is super cool. 104 schools are participating in this league run by the Vikings. And as I noted how quickly it's grown, schools they more than doubled, from last year. Season 1 is 51 and now more than 100. So this was a pilot program just 2 years ago. And so this year, double headers will take place each weekend over the next 4 weeks, before the playoffs will occur at the end of May. And then the state championship will be held, right here in Eagan. Not in the studio, not in the field house, but TCO Stadium, outdoors, under the lights, in the sun. That's going to be Monday, June 8th. And the Vikings as an organization over the last couple of years, that 2024 pilot program to now, they've invested more than $2 million to grow girls flag football in Minnesota. And as it's noted here from my notes, the ultimate goal of seeing the sport sanctioned at the high school level, which has already happened in 17 states across the country. I mean, if you can have breakdancing in the Olympics, you might as well be able to have flag football sanctioned within not just the state of Minnesota, but maybe any state as girls are participating in that. So one more time here, 104 schools over the next 4 weeks, double headers on Sundays starting this Sunday, the 26th. It's Minnesota high school girls flag football. So as we await the head coach, Kevin O'Connell, we're going to get his reaction on the Caleb Banks selection. And as we've talked about throughout the show, 9 to noon, just and this is how I see it. You as a listener, as a fan, if you disagree with me, that's all good. I mean, I'm not better than you. I don't know more than you in some instances. So, I see it as two worlds right now. Where when I saw that pick, I was excited about it because of the talent. A couple of foot breaks in the last year. That's worrisome to me. That's the risk portion that we've been talking about, not just after the selection was made last evening, even before it, and certainly throughout 9 to noon today. Some skepticism around it. We want multiple players that can contribute to this team early and often in 2026, and the very first selection you see is deemed a wild card. Now, do they see it? Right? That's, again, the two worlds. Do they see it as a wild card? Down that hall, in that draft room with the board up and everything, all the work that they put in. You've heard it, whether it's assistant coaches going down there spending the day, the reporting by Alec Lewis and others that have followed this thing. Does the team see it as the ultimate wild card? And it's the two worlds that we are living in, the confidence that they have in this selection. It has to work. And, I mean, there's got to be some fatigue among you. There can be at times for me as well. Just kind of I get that it has to work. We've been talking about this has to work for multiple years now. We're still hoping for the evolution of a Dallas Turner. We've gone down the road multiple times, maybe not just always on 9 to noon, but you have the internet access you do at your fingertips on your phone or at your computer at home. You can look up recent drafts of your favorite football team, and you're not finding a lot of gold among those selections. So you feel like you're being sold on something. You feel like, I'm tired of being patient. Hey, should have had Thieneman. He was the safe option. All those conversations, but excited to hear from the head coach in terms of the level of confidence that he has, and really kind of the path forward into day 2. So still 8 more selections. At least 3 of them are going to take place today with picks 49, and then they got 2 later in the 3rd round. And, okay, so if you had selected Thieneman, and we're pumped about the Oregon Cat, okay, that's all good. Now we're entering the conversation today, 9 to noon, is Dylan Thieneman. Well, now what? And if you're looking at what's still available on the board as you enter into week 2, you start thinking about, okay, so we took the safety, probably don't need to do the safety. Now it's the conversation of that defensive tackle, right? Like Caden McDonald, we spent so much time talking about him. He's still on the board. Hey, let's go. We don't need to worry about McNeil Warren out of Toledo, but hey, a couple of those corners that we were really pumped about in the first round. First round talent, Jermod McCoy. Knee might be a complete mess, but we don't know that for sure. We're not doctors. So he's still on the board. Maybe we take him tonight. Those sorts of things. Taking Caleb Banks now changes that conversation really into, well, what do we think about McNeil Warren out of Toledo? And how quickly will these guys go? The maneuverability and that grocery list, like when we were talking about who's available and what's next and what Pete Bursich wants to see. And, the edge rusher for me, if they are to take an edge at some point today, I would absolutely love adding somebody into that mix. Again, the unknown with Grenard, a depth issue, aging with Van Ginkel, and those sorts of things. But hitting on center, the offensive line's been a thing for me since minute 1. Mm-hmm. A young day 2 receiver.
Thank you.
Would absolutely adore that if something happens. There's so many holes to fill. I mean, I'm still thinking about a tight end. I like that Endries cat out of Texas. He's a walk-on at Cal. I think he was catching passes from Fernando Mendoza out in California, finds his way to Texas. What if Jack Endries ends up being a playmaker for the Purple at some point? More likely day 3 than today. But the grocery list and what this team could potentially do later today, I'm pumped to get to that draft show at 6:30 p.m. with Saucy. About $95 to $120 in Chinese food has been pre-ordered, and it'll be picked up from the spot. And then Saucy and I are going to get after it, and hopefully we get at least 3 new players into the mix here with the purple. But
let's break real quick.
Should we break?
Yeah, break time.
Okay, well, how about this?
Yeah,
we're going to pause, and we're going to hopefully, maybe we get to chat with the head coach. Maybe it isn't to be, but
hopefully
we're going to pause and jump into the final segment.
Yes.
The post game could be mid game when we return 9 to noon.
Thank you. Twin Cities Orthopedics Performance Center, 9 to noon rolls on, and we welcome Kevin O'Connell, head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, a day removed from selecting Caleb Banks, 18th overall in the draft. 3 picks as of now for today, and the coach joins us now. Caleb Banks, Florida, 6'6". Is it, you've chatted about so many things now, including with graciously with us at the draft party last night, your press conference and everything. Maybe this came up and I missed it. Is it underrated to think, when Banks gets up and running, the pass deflections? I mean, it's 6'6", passes, defense, tip passes, however you want to look at it. It's like I was driving home from the draft party last night, and so many people are talking about so many different things. I'm like, well, what about deflected passes at the line? That could be cool.
Yeah, I think, we have a phrase around here, tip a ball, change a game. The block shot for D linemen have been,
that's what I meant.
I mean, historical. I mean, you think back to, critical plays in my coaching career, whether it was Aaron Donald at the end. I mean, Joe Burrow's got a chance to throw the ball to Jamar Chase to maybe change the outcome of that game, and Aaron Donald gets in the backfield from an interior D-line spot and causes Joe to not be able to make that throw. And the block shot's key. I mean, he's so long. He's got first step quickness. The big thing is obviously pairing an interior difference maker potentially with our scheme and the things that people have to go through when you talk about a game week playing against Brian Flores. It's Monday through Saturday of trying to solve problems, and you're really not ever really particularly talking about an individual player within those problems. I mean, every now and again, whether it's an edge player or, maybe trying to attack somebody in the secondary, maybe. But in regards to, there's going to be rules people have to break all the time when they play the Minnesota Vikings. And circling back to getting the slide to Caleb Banks, if he's the type of player that we think he's going to be, that's going to open up a lot of things. That's going to open up, getting to rush the back every single snap, whether you're talking about some of the, really good backs out of the backfield catching passes in the NFL or in the NFC North. Think about Jahmyr Gibbs, in that second game when we played against Detroit. We were blitzing them and keeping them in there, and they eventually had to put Montgomery in the game, to really have a chance to execute their, known passing situation, third downs. But the block shot, impacting the run game on early downs, and then obviously his ability to get on edges and win with power, win through the body, but then also with that sheer athleticism and quickness, there was a lot to like when you study his tape.
And with his physical situation of late, Tyler Williams, your vice president of player health and performance, and the doctors that you use year round, let's call them the team doctors.
Yep.
That they obviously were paramount in a situation like this, right?
Yeah, and it's you gather as much information as you can through the process from, the touch points, whether it's the combine medical, the 30 visit, we can do a full physical and really kind of assess exactly where that player's at currently at that stage. And then, he had the procedure right after the combine that our doctors are very close with the doctor that did that. It's a very, very highly thought of doctor that, outside of maybe one of our doctors here in the Twin Cities is maybe right up there as one of the best in the country for
that's awesome
for the foot and ankle stuff that comes up. So we have those conversations. PA, look, I know it's Caleb happens to have an injury that everybody knows about. Fans know about it. Everybody attempting to try to get their mock draft as right as possible. They know about it, but one thing that hits me every year is the amount of medical information that people don't know about, particularly in regards to, players picked throughout the first round, or maybe players that, fans at home thought there's no possible way that player doesn't get picked in the first round, and then they don't.
Yeah.
It's not the player's fault. It's not the team's fault. It's just the information.
Like the Tennessee corner.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And,
wow.
and there's a lot of reasons for that, information sometimes. And quite honestly, I don't think it's always the right thing for that information to get out there. Caleb happens to have something right now that people know about. He's a big man. I understand that. It's a foot injury. But I can promise you that a heck of a lot more goes into it as far as the projection of where not only we think he's at right now, where we think he's going to be at for training camp, and then what, hopefully a long career with the Minnesota Vikings looks like based upon all that information.
Did the draft in front of you go the way you mostly thought it would? And the reason I ask is, was there a level of concern or a stress point at any point with you, Rob, and whomever that, wow, these guys might jump up and get who we want?
Yeah, I think, our board, I think we had a lot of the grades right as far as the guys that went off. Look, this was not a draft. Every year we want to try to make sure there's going to be 32 first-round picks every year. That doesn't always mean there's 32 first-round grades.
Right.
And year to year, I think we maybe got a little distorted picture with, the COVID year and, guys getting extra years and these volumes of players at certain positions showing up over the last few drafts or so. But we're kind of at a point now where I think we had maybe 50 players with a draftable grade of fourth round or higher that went back to school. And you're taking those guys out of the pool. So it did kind of go the way we thought. I thought, one of the things I was really looking for was I thought that third pick, there might be kind of a draft changing kind of move that was made. Arizona stuck and picked a really, really good player in Jeremiah Love. And then I thought when the tackle run started, was going to be something that, quite honestly, we were monitoring because, there was a lot of teams behind us picking that we felt pretty strongly about were coming up for a tackle if we could potentially move back and maybe still get the player or one of the 3 or 4 players that we had kind of targeted at 18. We were ready to do that, with how the tackles came off the board, and then also where a couple other of the the skill players that went where they did, the phones, did get quiet, and we had a mindset and a plan for, making a really good selection that we felt great about at 18, and that's what we did. Now, the key, the way I've looked at this draft today is a huge day.
Yeah.
Because where maybe maybe you don't have the 28 to 34 first round graded players, we call them red or better players that we think can be, potential starters to impact starters. There's a good number of those guys here that will go off the board in the second and third rounds. So that's why a lot of teams were looking to move back in the draft. And but we've got some players targeted. We'll see how the board falls. That's the one thing about it. As much as maybe me or Flo or Rob or ownership have identified a player you want, you're still subject to 31 other teams and all the picks around you that inevitably leave you with the players to select at that moment on your board.
This is today and tomorrow. This is meat and potatoes time, right? I mean, the first round's glitzy. Is it televised, wrap party show, whole thing? No, picks matter. Don't get me wrong.
What would you classify as between meat and potatoes?
Carrots. Probably carrots. Players who wear orange uniforms.
Yeah, I would say today's still it's meat. We're trying to find. We've identified guys that we think we can really build our team around here moving forward.
When I say meat and potatoes, okay, let me get Viking specific.
Yep.
Where you come into yesterday, you have 4 picks in the top 100.
Yep.
Okay, and it's if you wanted to amass more in the top 100, take more swings. things, great. Or if you stay where you are, great. But when I say meat and potatoes, it would be the blue-collar approach to players who can maybe impact or play next year.
Yep.
So maybe you do that every single year, or maybe sometimes you take players, it's like, yeah, if it works out next year, great, but we want this in our stable for 5 to 10 years.
Yep.
So that's what I mean is like today and tomorrow, finding players who can help now. Is that fair?
Yeah, and I think the way to look at it is you always want to draft, or at least go through the draft process with a ceiling grade in mind.
Mm-hmm.
If this player reaches his potential, whether it's skill level, whether it's height, weight, speed, length, whether it's scheme fit, whatever it is, you're projecting a grade on that player. But one of the things we also talk about is a year one role, because we've experienced Jordan Addison catching 10 touchdowns in his rookie year and having an impact on our team. We've also experienced, drafting a guy like Dallas Turner, where we had just signed Jonathan Grenard and Andrew Van Ginkel in free agency. So the pathway to people having an immediate answer to the question of was this a good pick or not doesn't always feel as clean to maybe people outside the building. But I can tell you, we're really excited about Dallas Turner. We're really excited about the fact that sometimes pass rushers, especially as talented as Dallas is, it takes time to really, smooth out that repertoire of pass rush moves, counter moves, every down impact. And we feel like he's right at that point in his career where he's going to, have a real great chance to do that. So every pick doesn't have the same pathway, especially when you're talking about, different mantras of the draft, PA, best player available, drafting for need. I think there's always a mixture, and you have to apply all the work that's been done. You have to apply all the information you have. And then the most important part, as I tell our coaches every year, drafting them is 1% of the equation. It's what we're going to do as coaches to develop those players and put them on the pathway to hopefully becoming that ceiling grade player that we thought we were selecting.
Tear it up today and tomorrow. And thank you very much for the time.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
Yeah, for sure. Kevin O'Connell, head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. Thank you, Sam. For Nordo and Brett Blakemore, I'm Paul Allen. 6:30 tonight, right? 6:30, Nordo and Meat Sauce with a draft-related radio show here on your home for Vikings football, FM 100.3 KFAN. May God bless you and all of your families. Thank you for listening to The Fan. Have a good day. Bye.
Podcast today's Paul Allen Show, or listen back to previous show and interviews by going to the iHeartRadio app or KFAN.com.